Okay, so we're on Lamed Aleph, Lamed Aleph, just about the middle of the line, middle of the page. Uh, oh no, we got all the way to the bottom, to the two dots. So we're on 31b4, 4 lines up from the bottom. So the Mishnah said, Habala chosav al chosavet. So again, the topic of the Mishnah is if you rape or seduce a Nara, so a 12-year-old girl who has recently, she's in within 6 months of showing simonim, which are the physical characteristics of puberty. So you have to pay the fine. So the Mishnah started saying that, the Gemara earlier said that these are opinions because the relationship with your sister you get kares for, and normally you don't get two punishments. So we had to talk about which opinion the Mishnah is like or which opinion the Mishnah isn't like. So now the Gemara, or Tosfos points out, we're going back on the beginning of the Mishnah, even though we were already talking about some things further along in the Mishnah. Or a minhu, I'll ask you a contradiction. Ve'elohein halokin habala chosav ve'al chosav ve'al chos imo ve'al chos ishto ve'al eishes acha ve'al eishes achiyav ve'al anida. So the following people can get lashes, the punishment of lashes. So Rashi points out that the Gemara lists there in Makos, but Rashi here points out that the list of cases in the Mishnah that lists are cases for which you get kares. But if you were warned, the violator was warned, don't do that avera, because if you do, you're going to get lashes. You will get lashes. It's a three-way machlokes tanaim about that, but that's the opinion over there. So if someone who has relations with his sister, or his father's sister, or his mother's sister, or his wife's sister, obviously while she's still alive, but once your wife dies, that relationship isn't forbidden anymore, and on your brother's sister, and on the wife of your uncle, so your father's brother's wife, Vial Hanida, or a woman who has her Nida, she's in her Nida period. The Kaimalan, as we turn the page, the Kaimalan, the Eino Loka Umishalin. And in that Mishnah, you're clearly getting Malkos to the exclusion of having to pay for the seduction or for a rape. That case doesn't seem to be rape. The Kaimalan, the Enoloka Mishalim, but we hold that you don't get lashes and pay. So how could that Mishnah say you get lashes and you don't pay? And our Mishnah says that you pay, so that would mean that you don't get lashes. So that means that this Mishnah, our Mishnah, is contradicting that Mishnah in Makos. So Amar Ulla explains that it's not a contradiction. Lo kasha, it's not a problem. Kan bachoso nara, kan bachoso bogeres. The case of our Mishnah that says that you pay the fine is because your sister in that, or the sister of the violator in that case, was a nara. She was 12 years old, and within the 6 months of showing signs of puberty. So for a nara, you do have to pay the fine. So therefore, because you pay, you're not going to get lashes or get kares. But the Mishnah in Makos, where it says you get lashes and you're not going to pay the fine, that's because the sister in that case has already more than 6 months have elapsed since she developed the signs, the physical characteristics of naros, and so therefore, once she's no longer a nara, she becomes, we said, the halachic status of a bogeres. Remember the three categories: a katana, a minor girl, and then a nara for 6 months, where after she brings the signs, the physical signs of maturity, and then after 6 months of that, she's the status of a bogeres. So when she's a bogeres, because there is no fine of the 50 silver pieces, there's no fine, so therefore you will get malchus, you'll get lashes. So the Gemara asks, so in general, when someone injures someone else, and that's not exactly what we're talking about here, but when you injure someone else, you have to pay 5 types of payments. tsar, repoi, nezek, the damage, tsar, pain, repoi, the doctor bills, sheves, disability was for the amount of time, the missed work that you weren't able to work, and boshes, embarrassment. So according to most Rishonim, it depends for the embarrassment. It depends who embarrassed you and what your status is. If you're a very distinguished person and someone embarrasses you, it's more embarrassing. But on the other hand, it depends who embarrassed you. If someone important is giving you a reprimand, well, reprimand wouldn't be embarrassed, but sometimes, it's more humiliating to receive to be, hit in public, let's say, by a certain type of person. So you would pay, they would have to pay you more money in boshes. So lahavdil, if your baseball coach, your sports coach, let's say, hits you, so that's not such an embarrassing thing because coaches do that. If it was someone much younger than you, and it was and you're a much more distinguished person, the fact that they hit you is much more embarrassing, and there would be a bigger amount of boshes. So tsar, the nezek, so the damage, tsar, pain, repoi, the doctor bills, sheves, the your missed work time, and boshes, the embarrassment. So when we have a case of ones umafata, the raped girl, Nara, or the seduced one, there's also an additional, besides for the 50 shekel fine that the man has to pay, he has to pay for her embarrassment and for pagam, her devaluation because of her value. Now, for this case, if I'm not mistaken, we would compare the value of a person, what their value would be on the slave market before and after. So in this case, there's no physical, visible change in her value. But let's say there is a halacha, and it doesn't apply to a Jewish slave, but for a non-Jewish slave, if a Jewish person owned an Eved Ivri, a Jewish slave who was sold because he stole and he couldn't pay back his thing, and so he was slave for 6 years. So if he was married, the halacha is that his master can give him shifcha knainis, the non-Jewish slave, and then if they would have kids, the kids would belong to the master, because the halacha is if the father's a Jew and the mother is a slave, the kids are slaves. We're not going to talk about normally a Jew would not be allowed to marry a slave, but for an Eved Ivri, it's not forbidden. It's something that has to be discussed, but we're not. It's not our topic here. So let's say the Eved Ivri was doing great work, so the master wanted to give him a virgin slave as opposed to a non-virgin slave. So the virgin slave would be worth more on the slave market. So that's the pagam, her decrease in value, and boshes, the embarrassment for this having happened. So even though for a bogeres there's no knas, the 50 shekel fine, but there is payment for her embarrassment and her decrease in value. So there's still a monetary payment there. So Ulla's answer doesn't explain that, because even if she's a bogeres, there are monetary payments you have to make. So you couldn't get malkos if you're also making a monetary payment. So the Gemara answers bishota. We have someone who is low functioning slash or someone who's not or is not really with it mentally. So in that case, she doesn't get embarrassed, so there would be no payment. And Rashi says if she's not with it, you can't have a slave who's not with you. You need a slave who could listen. So Rashi says that when she's a shota, I mean, in the old translations, we don't use this word anymore. in the old translations, they used to translate it as an imbecile, but someone who didn't have any seichel, didn't have any, common sense to do things. So they wouldn't be embarrassed because they didn't realize anything happened. And Rashi says there's no value on the slave market because I guess someone who doesn't know, what's going on, it wouldn't make a good slave. So they have no value. So v'ha'ika tzara, but there's also pain that she underwent from this experience. So the Gemara answers b'mafuta, because remember, there's a case of rape. So that case, there definitely would be an obligation to pay her for physical pain. But there's also the case of mafuta, the seduced maiden. So in that case, because she was seduced, there was no pain that went along with the situation over there. So in that case, so if it's a shota and it was mafuta, now I mean in I would say in contemporary law, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think that a shota and mafuta wouldn't you couldn't have both statuses in I shouldn't say, I don't know if it's civil or it might be criminal law, because it probably would be considered statutory rape, because if she's a shota, she's not able to give consent. So now, in the United States, it would be called statutory rape. So there would be no legal mafuta, at least in the legal sense of the United States. But whatever, it's a case where there's no tsar and she doesn't have any value on the slave market, and she doesn't realize anything, so she didn't get embarrassed. So there's no monetary payment. So in that case, the Gemara in Makos says that you would get Malchus. So then the Gemara says, Hashta da asas lahachi, once we gave all these answers, afilu tema choso nara, even if we could say that, so Ulla's answer was because she's a Bulgaria, so there's no knas, no fine of 50 silver pieces, but there's Boshas and Pagam and Tsar. But once we gave all these answers, we figured out there's another answer that we can answer the contradiction is afilo tema choso nara. Even the case, the Gemara in the Mishnah in Makos can be talking about a case where she's a nara, she's 12 years old and within 6 months of developing the signs of puberty. But biyasoma umafuta could be a case where she's an orphan and she was seduced, because when she's an orphan, her father doesn't get any of the money. And because it's a case of, so meaning if she had a father, her father could marry her off. So, but since there's no father here, and because if her father would have been alive, he would be able to marry her off, any money that she would make would go to her father. But if she was orphaned, she didn't have a father, so any money that she would make would be hers. But because it's a case of being seduced, obviously, if she was seduced and then she consented, there was no embarrassment, and she was mochelas. She obviously consented, so therefore there is no decrease in her value. So both cases can be talking about a nara, but the Mishnah in Makos is a case where she has no father, her father is dead, and she was seduced. So because she consented to the act, there is no charge, a monetary charge of her being embarrassed or her devaluation, of monetary devaluation. Almak savar Ulla. So it seems that Ulla holds kol hecha deika mamon umalkos mamona mishale milki lo laki. When there's a monetary payment and lashes, you would pay the money and not get lashes. Minale la Ulla. So where does Ulla know this? What's his source? So meaning, when you get two punishments, or when you have an obligation of two punishments, you only receive one punishment. But which one do you get? Do you have to pay the money, or would you get the lashes? Which one would take precedence? So Gamar Mechova b'Chavero. So the Gemara says that Ulla knows that a case where if you have a monetary payment and an obligation for lashes, you only pay money from the case of injuring someone else. And this is what I mentioned, that you have 5 payments. So this is chova. You injure someone. When you injure someone else, there's a monetary payment. We for the damage, the pain, the doctor bills, the amount of time that he couldn't work, and the embarrassment, and also lashes. There's an avera, a negative commandment, not to hit someone. Yosef. So even though that's by that you when you give 40 lashes, you're not allowed to give more. So we learned from the fact you can't give more. If you injure someone, you hit someone when you're not supposed to, it's an avera. So just in that, and for an avera, you would normally get lashes. So just like in this case, the person underwent did something for which he has to pay monetary restitution or monetary damages and also receive lashes. We say he pays the money and doesn't get lashes. Mamona mishali milko lo laki. He pays the money and doesn't get lashes. So also wherever there is a monetary obligation and a punishment of lashes, he pays the money and he doesn't have to pay, and he doesn't have to receive the lashes. So so Rashi says, and we're going to say that Gemara is going to mention this in the next line. In this case, it's the monetary payment is stricter. So the Gemara asks, but how can Ulla learn in all cases where you have to pay money and get lashes that you pay money? Maybe injuring someone else, you pay money because he ends up getting a stricter punishment from paying money because he has to pay 5 different categories of restitution. Again, the damage, the pain, the doctor bills, the loss of work, and the embarrassment. But maybe when paying money is a more lenient punishment than lashes, shekain huter mechlala. So then you shouldn't learn from chova l'chavero shekain huter mechlala beveistin, because injuring someone, there's a case where injuring is completely allowed, and that is Basin is allowed to hit people. So there's 2 different types of cases where Basin's allowed to hit people. One is when they're giving lashes for someone violating a Torah law, and there's also Basin is permitted, and in that case, according to certain opinions in certain situations, they're actually allowed to hit you worse if you're not fulfilling a mitzvah. So let's say someone's refusing to put on tefillin, or there's a case someone was refusing to do kibbut avayim. So Basin is allowed. So if you did an avera, you wore shatnez or something, or you get 39 lashes or up to 39 lashes. If you're refusing to put on tefillin, they could keep hitting you until you say yes, but within an inch of your life. They can't kill you over that. So they can actually hit you even worse in enforcement of your non-fulfillment of a mitzvah. But that's not the mitzvah of lashes, but that's a responsibility that Beis Din has, shoftim v'shotrim, that if Beis Din sees that you're not fulfilling mitzvahs, they can try to enforce you to do a mitzvah. So the source for that might be not mitzvah as I say, but it's not the type of malchus of normally we get the punishment of malchus. So maybe hitting someone is a little bit more lenient because there's a whole category of hitting someone that's completely exempt, and that's when Beis Din is hitting someone. So it's true that when one person injures someone else, they pay money and don't get lashes, but that's because in that case lashes is a more lenient punishment. But how do you know in a case where lashes is not more lenient, maybe you would get the lashes and not have to pay the money? So Elagamer me'edim zomamim, he learns from the case of plotting witnesses. So again, plotting witnesses, and that's the beginning of Gemara and Makos. The Mishnah that we just asked was the beginning of the 3rd chapter of Makos, but in the 1st chapter of Makos, the case, the halacha is I won't use the case of the Mishnah there, but let's say I'll use the 2nd Mishnah there. Someone said that you owed someone $100, and then because you lent them on such and such a day in such and such a place, so Reuven and Shimon were witnesses. And then a day or two later, Dan and Naphtali, 2 other witnesses, said Reuven and Shimon there's no way, we don't know if the loan ever took place. But Reuben and Shimon, you certainly couldn't have witnessed that loan because you said it happened in Chicago at 12:30 on Wednesday afternoon, but you were with us in St. Louis at 1:00 in the afternoon. So you couldn't have gone from Chicago to St. Louis in half an hour. So you couldn't have been there. So in that case, the witnesses the witnesses get the witnesses in that case were trying to make the person lose money, lose $100. So the halacha for Edom Zomamim is kasher zamam. They get the punishment that they were trying to give. So in this case, it's a monetary punishment, but also they violated an avera against giving false testimony. So the kasher zamam says that they have to, whatever they try to do, that's what they get. So they tried to force a monetary payment. So their punishment is monetary payment. They also gave false testimony so that as a regular negative commandment, they would have malgos, they would get lashes. So which punishment do Edom Zomamim get? Do they get the monetary payment, which in this example, they were trying to make someone pay? Or do they receive the lashes for false testimony? So ma Edom Zomamim the Ika Mamonu Malkos Mamon Masham Melkololaki, when Edom Zomamim were testifying about a monetary case, so they have an obligation to pay money and they have a punishment of lashes. They pay the money and they don't get lashes. Whenever there is a monetary obligation and an obligation of lashes, they pay the money and don't get lashes. Now, the Gemara is going to talk about, I don't think we're going to get there today, but the Gemara very soon, our Gemara is going to talk about how do we know that they pay the money and don't get lashes. I think Rashi brings down here from the Gemara in Makos, or our Gemara is going to say it, that there's the Xeris HaKasuv of Mishum Risha Achas Atamachayvo. You can only obligate him for one evil, and you can't obligate him for two. So that's how we know there's one punishment. But how do we know that lashes is that money is the one you get and not lashes? Our Gemara is going to learn that out a little bit later. But then the Gemara asks on this, Mala Edom Zomim Shekin Ein Tzrich and Hasra. But you shouldn't be able to learn from Edom Zomim to all other cases because Edom Zomim has a special, unique law. Normally, when you do an avera, you need to receive a warning from witnesses or from someone that you're about to do an avera, which has a certain punishment. Edom Zomim is an exception to the rule. You don't warn the witnesses before they testify. Make sure you're not testifying falsely. The imamona lakulahu, and also, and if you want to say that in this case the monetary payment is more lenient than receiving the lashes, we can still ask that you can't learn all other cases from Edom Zomim. Shekain lo asumaisa. In halacha, saying something is actually not a full-fledged deed. So let's say if I want to buy something, I say, I want to buy this from you. I accept upon myself to buy it from you. Your statement doesn't take effect. That's not the way you would buy things. If you pick it up, you do an action, that's the kinyan. That's the act of acquisition. So what I'm saying is not it is an example. It doesn't explain all things, but in halacha, an action, a speech is not necessarily an action. Obviously, if you testify, there's consequences to the speech, but just speaking words isn't an action. So how can you compare it to, let's say, someone eating treif, or someone who hits, or someone who did an avera, who plowed on Shemitah or harvested on Yantif? So Ela Gomer Mitrabayos. You're right. We couldn't learn out just from injuring someone else. We couldn't learn out just from Edom Zomimim. So we're going to learn from both of them. So in Rabbi Shmuel, I think, well, we call this a mahatzad. We learn it from two halachos, and because each one has a special, when we ask, the first one has a special detail that doesn't apply to other halachos. We take the second law, which doesn't have that unique feature. That second thing has its own unique feature. So then we go back to the first law, which does not have that feature. So that's what we're going to say right here. Alagamar Mitravaya, we learned from both of them, injuring someone where you pay, and Edim Zomimim where you pay, and you don't get lashes. The common denominator between the two halachos of injuring someone or giving Edim Zomimim is they're obligated to make a monetary payment and also receive lashes. Mamona Mashali Milko Lolaki, the halacha is that they pay the money and they don't get lashes. So whenever you have a monetary obligation and lashes, you pay the money and you don't get lashes. So the Gemara asks, so the injuring someone had the special unique status that you have to pay 5 categories of payments. So we could answer, so Edim Zomimim doesn't, it's only one payment. But then the question is, Edim Zomim has a special unique feature that it's not, you didn't do an action, all they did was talk. So we use the halacha of chova b'chavero, of injuring someone, because that is an action. Okay. But now the Gemara asks, but, so it's true, they don't have the same unique status, but each of them has a special stringency. The imamona lakulahu, and if paying money is a lenient punishment, shekin yesh behen tzad hakal, we can say that both Edim Zomimim and injuring someone has a lenient thing. So if they have a lenient aspect, you can't learn it out from all other halachos in the Torah or other mitzvos or situations, which the Tosfos points out is a bit of a strange thing, because that's whenever we're learning a derivation like this, the reason is because they both have leniencies, but they don't have the same leniencies, so you can learn out from something else. So now we turn to Lamed Beis, Amud Beis. Ela Ulla tachas gamer. So again, the question is, how does Ulla know that when you would receive malchus and pay monetary payment, that you pay the money? So first we tried to say from injuring someone, where you pay money, you don't get lashes for hitting. And we said that doesn't work. So then we said Edim Zomimim, where you should get lashes for giving false testimony and money for kasher zamam, for the punishment that you were trying to make someone receive. But we said, no, it's not a maisa. So rather he learns a gzera shava, tachas. So ksiv hacha tachas asher ina, it says here that he pays the father of the woman 50 pieces of silver for having laid with her. Uksiv hasam, and it says by injuring someone, ayin tachas ayin, an eye for an eye. Ma hasam amon mashal mokololaki, just by eye for an eye. Now the Gemara there's a whole amud and a half in Bava Kama how we know that it's that eye for an eye is money. I think, and it's been a long time since I learned it, so from that Gemara, I think that the real answer is everyone knows that ayin tachas ayin, it's a halach l'moshe Sinai, it's the oral tradition. It's not in the written Torah, but it's in the oral tradition that ayin tachas ayin is money. And when the Gemara there, many Amoraim give opinions how they did, that's a justification for it, but that's not the real source. The real source is a halach l'moshe Sinai. But just like when you injure someone, ayin tachas ayin is a monetary payment, so too tachas asher ina, in our case of our Mishnah and again, my Gemara here doesn't say which pasuk, but it doesn't say if it's a pasuk in Shemos or Pashas, or a pasuk in Mishpatim. Just the pasuk in Kiseitz and Dvarim, so that's the parsha of rape, if I'm not mistaken. So so whenever there is a monetary payment and lashes, you pay the monetary payment, you don't get lashes. So that's how Ulla learns it. Rabbi Yochanan Amar. Now Rabbi Yochanan gives a different answer to explain the contradiction between our Mishnah and the Mishnah in the third chapter of Makos. Do you get lashes for having for raping your sister or whatever mafuta we said according to Ulla, or do you pay the money if she's 12 years old in the status of Nara? Rabbi Yochanan Amar afilu temachoso Nara. Both Mishnah, our Mishnah and the Mishnah Makos can both be talking about where it's a Nara, 12-year-old within the first 6 months of her developing the physical signs of Naros, of puberty. Kancha hisrubo, kancha lo hisrubo. The difference is if you get a warning, the brother got a warning that he was going to get lashes, then he gets lashes. If he didn't get a warning for lashes, then he can't get lashes, and instead he pays the money. This implies that Rabbi Yochanan holds if there was a case where you would have to pay a monetary payment and get malchus, if you get warned for lashes, you would get the lashes and you wouldn't pay the money. So this is kind of the opposite of Ulla. Ulla says when you have both cases, you would pay. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, if you would get warned for lashes, you would get lashes, you wouldn't pay. So Minale Rabbi Yochanan. What's Rabbi Yochanan's source for this? Amar Krakidei Rishoso. So this is, I mentioned this before because that's where the Gemara in Makos says that you could only get one punishment. So Kidei Rishoso. So when the wicked person is being hit, this is for giving false testimony. The judge will hit him. Will judge him, and he will be hit according to his wickedness with a number. So Kedei Rishaso for his wickedness is in singular. Mishum Risha Achas Atamachayvo, V'iyat Tamachayvo Mishum Shtei Rishayos. You can only get punished for one thing and not twice. V'samachle, and the next pasuk says Abrahim Yakanu. You get 40 lashes. So when there's a monetary obligation, because here he wanted to make someone lose, he gave testimony to try to make someone lose money. But there's also lashes, you would get lashes. So then the Gemara asks, but if you injure someone else, that you have to pay monetary payments for the damage that you caused, but also an obligation of lashes because there's an avera to hit someone. So in that case, you pay money and you don't get lashes. So how come that's different? And if you want to, and even if you want to say that in the case of injuring someone, you only pay money if you didn't get warned that, if you're about to hit him, you're going to get lashes. But if you want to say that if he did get warned, you're about to hit someone, like the classic case, Moshe Rabbeinu saw what's her names in Mitzrayim, Lama Sakes Reyacha. They were just killed finally in Parshas Korach a week and a half ago. We read it. Dasan and Avira. Yeah, it's Dasan and Avira. So how do we know that if one of them they were warned, you're about to hit them, you're going to get malchus, still you have to pay. Because Rabbi Ami said the name of Rabbi Yochanan, and we're talking about an answer of Rabbi Yochanan right now. So Rabbi Ami said the name of Rabbi Yochanan. If you injured someone in a way that you caused less than a pruta of damage, a pruta was the smallest coin around then. So you hit them and you really didn't cause any damage. So in that case, you get lashes. Hechidami, what's the case? Idlu asr b'yamei loka. If you didn't warn him before he hit the other guy, why does he get lashes at all? Alapshita the isrubei. So it's simple that he must have been warned for lashes. V'taima the leis beishava pruta. The only reason that you get lashes for hitting someone is because you injured him so minutely that there was no real damage that he could claim. It was, half a cent. The implication of that statement is if you would have, if someone would have hit someone else and there would have been damage of real money, they would have to pay and not get lashes. So how does Rabbi Yochanan know that just because of Kidei Rishaso, you get one punishment and the next pasuk is Malchus, but we know that here's an exception to that rule of hitting someone. So how does he know that hitting someone is the exception and not the rule? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Allah, he knows it because he agrees with Rabbi Allah's teaching. For those in the art school, we've already turned to 32b2, a few lines above, I'm sorry. So Rabbi Allah says the Torah explicitly said that Eidim Zomimim, the plotting witnesses who gave false testimony, have to pay money. So Hachanami, similarly, he holds the Torah specifically said that if you injure someone else, you pay. So because of that, that's the exception. But in general, if you would do something for which there's a monetary obligation and lashes, you would get lashes, according to Rabbi Yochanan. The Hecher Itmar Rabbi Law, in what context? What was the source about which Rabbi Law made his statement? Aha, and the following case, Mishnah in Makos. They testified that a certain person will say that Yosef owes 200 zuz to Binyamin, and the witnesses are Reuven and Shimon. And Reuven and Shimon were found to be plotting witnesses because two other witnesses says you could not have seen Yosef make that loan because you were in a different place with us at the time, or close enough to that time that you couldn't have been in both places at the time that you said it happened. So Lokin and Mishalman. So the Tanakama, we'll see which is Rabbi Meir's opinion. Rabbi Meir holds you get two punishments. Those Eidim Zomimim get lashes and they have to pay. Shelo Hashem Hamavili de Malchus Mavili de Tashlumin. Because the shame, the name, the pashtus means the Avera for testifying. There's one Avera for testifying falsely, for which you get Malchus, and there's a separate Avera of Kasher Zamam that you get what you plotted to do to your brother. So it's two separate Averos, so you get one punishment for each Avera. Shelo Hashem Hamavili de Malchus Mavili de Tashlumin. The Avera, the reason for which you get lashes is not the same source which makes you pay. So Divi Rabbi Meir, these are Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir holds that Eidim Zomimim actually make two pay. They have to pay and get lashes. The Chachamim Omer Kol Mishalem Eino Loka. The Chachamim say they argue Rabbi Meir, and they say whoever has to pay does not get lashes. So then the question is, V'nei Makol Loka Eino Mishalem. Why do the Chachamim know that if you pay, you don't get lashes? Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe the default punishment should be if you get lashes, you don't pay. So how do Chachamim know that the default punishment is Mishalem? Rabbi Law, but Ferish Rib Satorah Eidim Zomimim L'Tashlumin. Rabbi Law says the Torah explicitly said that Eidim Zomimim have to pay. So in the case of Eidim Zomimim, if they would have to get pay money and get lashes, they have to pay. Heichen Rib Satorah. So how do we know the Torah explicitly included that Eidim Zomimim have to pay monetary? So the pasuk says you should do like they plotted to do to his brother, and you will eliminate the evil from your midst. So if they were causing them to get a death penalty, they said that he lit a fire on Shabbos, and so they would get skila. So then the Eidim Zomim would get skila. If they said that he owed money, so then the Eidim Zomim would have to pay money. If they said he ate treif, so he would get malchus, the Eidim Zomim would get malchus. And then the next pasuk says you cannot have pity. Your eyes cannot take pity. A soul for a soul, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, and a foot for a foot. So that's not the same pasuk as ayin tachas ayin in Parshas Mishpatim, because this is in Parshas Shoftim and Devarim. But once it already said you have to do what you wanted to do, kasher zamam, how come it had to say yad b'yad? Why did it have to say a hand for a hand? Davar hanitin miyad liyad. When the Torah says a hand for a hand, it doesn't mean you cut off a hand if they cut off a hand. It means something which is given from hand to hand. Umaynihu mamon. And what is this? Money. So in the context of kasher zamam, in the next pasuk it mentioned yad b'yad. So yad b'yad is a special inclusion to say that if a monetary payment is what they were trying to do, they have to make the monetary payment. Umaynihu mama. So you pay monetary. Chova b'chavero nami. And so just like Edom Zomimim, there's a special pasuk to tell us that you pay money when there's a possibility to pay money. Also, when you injure someone, there's the Torah explicitly mentioned, well, not explicitly, but there's a drasha that the Torah says that when you injure someone else, you pay money and you don't get lashes. Just like he did, so is done to him. Keni nasein bo lamali. So in Mishpatim, it says when someone will put a blemish in his fellow, just like he did, that is done to him. A broken in case of a broken, an eye in place of an eye, a tooth in place of a tooth. As you make a blemish on a person, that is given to him. So how come it had to say in the second pasuk, so is given to him? So Yinasin given lamali davar sheyesh bonasina. You have to give something which is givable. Umaynihu mamon. And what is that? That's a monetary obligation. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, the default when you could make a monetary payment and get lashes is to get lashes, and Edom Zomimim and injuring someone are exceptions that you have to pay money. Now it happens to be, you could say that this is connected to what we saw Rav Ami in the name of Rav Yochanan, the second further up on this page. Because remember, Rav Ami said in the name of Rav Yochanan, if you injure someone, you hit someone, but there's not a pruta's worth of damage, they get lashes. So when do you pay damages? When it's possible to pay damages. But when it's not givable, you can't give half a penny to someone. So in that case, because you can't pay, you get lashes. Rabbi Yochanan, my time Amar Ulla. So why didn't Rabbi Yochanan hold like Ulla? So according to Ulla, the default is you would pay and not get lashes. According to Rabbi Yochanan, the default is lashes and not money. So Rabbi Yochanan, my time Amar Ulla. Why did Rabbi Yochanan answer like Ulla? Because in case you're never going to have a halacha of the nakedness of your sister, you should not reveal. Meaning, what's the punishment for that case of incest? Kares. But if the default is the monetary payment, you're almost never going to get kares. Because you'll just say you'll make a monetary payment. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan Chovav Chavero Nami. But according to that, if you injure someone else, now we're on Lamed Gimel Lamed Aleph, Im Kain B'Tato Yosef and Yosef. We said that when you injure someone, you have to pay 5 categories of damages, or 5 categories of payments. Nezek, Tsar, Ripo, Shevas, and Boshes. The damage, the pain, the doctor bills, the amount of time that the person couldn't work, and the embarrassment. But if you always pay money for injuring someone else, we never have a case where you get punished for lo Yosef and Yosef, for actually injuring someone, where you get malchus. So the Gemara, and Adam Zomamim Nami, Im Kain Bitalta Vayamin Hakos Arasha. If Adam Zomamim always have to pay money, according to the logic of Rabbi Yochanan, then we're never going to have a case. We don't have cases where we give them malchus. So then what? So we're nullifying the pasuk of giving lashes to the Eid Zomim. So the Gemara says, we're on the third line, Ella Adam Zomamim Efshel Kuma ben Grusha ben Chalutza. There's a specific category of cases where Adam Zomamim get lashes, and that is if they said that so and so, who people think is a Kohen, he's not really a Kohen because his mother was divorced from someone else before she married this guy's father, and because we know that she's divorced, this guy's not a Kohen anymore. Now, what punishment? Now, if the punishment for Adam Zomamim is kasher zamam, you do what they wanted to give, but if they're Yisraelim, you're going to say, oh, you're not a Kohen anymore. Well, they weren't a Kohen to begin with. So what kind of punishment is there? What kind of kasher zamam is? So the Gemara at the beginning of Malchus learns that in that case, the default punishment isn't kasher zamam. It's not what they wanted to cause to their fellow, but rather it's just straight out lashes. So for Adam Zomamim, we have categories of cases where they will always get lashes. Injuring someone else, there's always a category of cases of hitting someone else, injuring someone else, where you have to get lashes, and that is if you hit them but didn't cause a pruta's worth of damage. So because you can't pay money, you get lashes. So now, if we answered that, now the Gemara says, but we could say that the pasuk which tells us that if you would have incest with your sister, if there would be a monetary obligation, Rabbi Yochanan saying, well, you're never going to have kares anymore, because again, now the Gemara in the beginning of the third chapter of Makos says that there's a certain Tana whose opinion is for kares, for a punishment, a sin for which the sin is kares, if you were warned to get lashes, you will get lashes and you won't get kares. So why don't we say that the case of incest with your sister, you're still going to get kares, because there's a whole category of which where you'll always get kares, and that is if the sister is more than 12 and a half years old. So she's not a Nara anymore. So there's no monetary payments. There's only Bogeres. So Amr Rabbi Yochanan hay tachas asher ina mi boy Rabbi. So Rabbi Yochanan, so now we're saying that just like we had answers for injuring someone, that there's a category of case where you get lashes, and Adam Zomamim, there's a category for which you always get lashes. If for Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza, there's a category of cases for incest with your sister where there's only lashes. So this can't be the answer of why Rabbi Yochanan says the default is lashes, and he doesn't say like Ulla that the default is money. So Ella Amr Rabbi Yochanan hay tachas ina mi boy Rabbi. We need the put to make a drasha tachas ina that he pays 50 a fine of 50 silver coins because he laid with her. Mi boy Rabbi. He needs it to learn a drasha from Abaye. Amar Abaye, Abaye says, Amar Kra, Tachas Ina. The pasuk says, because he laid with her. Now Rashi, the ArtScroll here is a little strange. ArtScroll first Ina says he violated her, and now a couple lines, the next line says Tachas Ina because he had afflicted her. Now, Enoi represents the marital relationship, the conjugal relation between a husband and wife, or in this case, between violators, or between a victim and a perpetrator. Whatever it is, it's talking about the fact that there was a sexual act over here. So, hi, this 50 shekel is because he laid with her. So that implies that the 50 shekel is only for having the sexual relation with her, implies that besides for that, he still has to pay for her embarrassment and for her decrease in value due to that. Larry, you have a question?
No, I'm sorry.
No.
I don't have
So he doesn't learn Tachas Sherina to show that you definitely pay in this case. He's saying that Rabbi Yochanan learns that that Tachas Sherina shows that besides for the 50 shekel fine, there's other categories of monetary payments that the man has to make. The Ulla. So how come Ulla doesn't need to? How does Ulla know that there's an obligation of Boshus Ufagam without using this drush of Abai from Tachas Sherina? Nafgalemi to Rava. He learns it out from Rava. The Amar Rava says, Amar Prabanasan Ha'isha Shochevi Malavian Aracha Mishim Kasef. The man who laid with her gives 50 shekel, 50 silver pieces to the father of the Nara, of the young woman. Hanas Shchiva Chamishin. So the benefit that this man got from laying with her is 50 shekel. That implies that besides for that benefit for which he's paying the 50 silver coins, he also has to pay Boshus Ufgam. Okay, so now we're at Rabbi Eliezer Omer, about 14 lines from the top of Lamid Gimel and Alf. We'll leave it here. God willing, we'll continue next week. So thanks for being here.